to my sizes of things page. This is what I have written about that.
If you want to know how big things are and how big they are compared to each other, you came to the right place. My sizes of things page has 45 size dimensions ranging from the electron to the known universe, with us remarkably close to the middle. The sizes are shown on the top of each size dimension section with the width of the white back. We live in size dimension number 19, so we are 58% closer in size to the electron than the universe to be exact. Out of the 45. With us as the anchor dimension at 1 meter across the yellow background field, there are 18 smaller dimensions and 29 larger dimensions.
So if you ever wanted to know how big you are in the universe compared to the electron, the smallest thingy we know, and the universe, the biggest thingy we know, then I shall have you know that we're 58% closer to the size of electron than the universe, so we're pretty much in the middle. So out of 45 size dimensions, we live here in number 19 out of 45, giving us 58% tendency towards 1. And this is the list, this is the list format, but this is the color format over here to show, just to condense it more, to show the negatives and the big and the positives, the ones smaller than us and the ones bigger than us, kind of right here in the middle. So, hey, let's look at this together, eh? Did you ever see that video, Power of 10? I should put the link of it here. Where every 10 seconds the field would be across by 10 times more. So this is what I'm talking about, 10 times more. So down here, the length of across here from across the color, the blue color, this is negative 18, number 1. The smallest, so this is the size of the electron. Neutrons, quarks, everything. Nucleons, quarks. And they are 1 quintillionth of a meter, which is otherwise known as an attometer. 1 quintillion in a meter. So that's how many zeros you have after that sucker. You have 12 zeros. 13 zeros after 1. So, now I didn't explain it up here because I haven't gotten that far along, but you would have, this goes 10 times smaller each page. So in the next one, it's 10 times smaller. You see? This is the same thing as this. So this field of view is 10 times bigger. So instead of 1 quintillionth of a meter, you're going to have 100 quadrillionths of a meter, which is 10 attometers. That's just 1 attometer. This is 10 attometers. Gotcha? Got it? So in number 17, which means to the power of 17 below where we are now, we'll just call it power of 17, but it's also called, you know, size dimension number 2 if you want to start it, number them from the smallest size dimension, but there's 2 ways to call it, you know. Power of 17, power of 18, power of 17. So I'm going to call it power of 17. Power of 16, you see how it gets even 10 times smaller. So this is 100 times smaller than this. 100 times smaller across. So this is your power of 16, and this is a me oh my, it doesn't say. Oh, it's the weak force range. Well, it doesn't say up here. It's the weak force range. The weak force is how close these subatomic particles need to be in order to have the gravitational effect on each other. If you get them farther away than that, they don't have the gravitational effect. So, power of 15 shows one thing, weak force range. And this is, once you get 1,000 times smaller, it's too small to put this, so let's take the electron away. So let's go down to the power of 14. Here's where you can see elements. Yeah, so here's the element of helium, And also you can see neutrons and protons, the larger of the subatomic particles. Proton's bigger than the electron. Smallest gamma ray is this big. The picture isn't here. Now this, for some reason the picture isn't here, I'll have to fix it, but this is the weak force range compared to the size of the neutron helium nucleus. And this is the little length here. Shorter than this, the nuclear force is stronger. Longer than this, the Coulomb force is stronger, meaning it will start to repel each other. They won't be sucking each other in, they'll be repelling each other. That's how nuclear bombs work. So, power of 13, these things are 10 times smaller. So this helium nucleus becomes this helium nucleus. Smallest gamma right here becomes this proton, becomes this proton. And then something 10 times bigger can fit into the picture. The first nucleuses of big atoms. So here's the gold nucleus, uranium nucleus. Gold's almost as big as uranium. Make a nuclear bomb. Aluminum nucleus. Power of -12 is has these guys hanging out in there. And then power of -11, and there's nothing in there. It's just these guys barely visible. And then, you know, that's how big of how much space there is between the you know, the nucleus and where the electron goes around. Most of the atom is empty. If the nucleus was the size of your fist of a tennis ball, the electron would be going around the outer edges of a football stadium. So here you go, -10, the electron and the proton, and no, as big as the largest gamma rays. So the smallest atom is the hydrogen atom. And then, so if you go 10 times smaller, you can see the hydrogen atom here 10 times smaller. And it's next to the carbon atom, a little bit smaller than the carbon atom, a little bit smaller than the water molecule, and the gold atom, a little bit bigger than that. No, I don't know if, I don't think this is the nucleus within this gold atom is accurate. It's just the atom itself. Yeah, uranium atom. So you're getting into the size of the atoms at -9, and the size of X-rays. You know, X-rays are waves are almost as big as atoms. That's why X-rays can go and kind of hit your nucleus and mutate things. So -8. Here's where you can have the DNA double helix. And then proteins are the same size. Buckyballs are that size, which are made of 60 carbon atoms in a one of those domes. They can do the double slits experiment with the buckyball, where they make it act as a wave if you're not looking at it. So you can turn that into a kind of make it disappear. Something that big, the size of your DNA. Interesting. So here's all those molecules. You see the molecules get pushed off to the side. So they exist. Things exist in two size dimensions. The big and then the smaller. So you can see them. You can see each thing from two different size dimensions continuously next to each other. So here are the double slit and the insulin protein with all their proteins. Here's the insulin protein. And here's the bigger proteins and double -7 with the smallest virus popping in the picture, living with the proteins. Here's where the polio virus went, down here, which is within the same size area as the herpes virus. It's a little bit smaller, and all these other viruses, AIDS virus. And here's nanotechnology. AIDS virus is like on the same size as nanotechnology, and that's interesting. And then here's what the double helix looks like, and it's coiled up. Here's a smallest known free living Urochroit. with all the and here we have all of the different color wavelengths that you can see with your eye at -6. So getting into what we are what we communicate with. So here's the visible light next to a red blood cell, and infrared wavelength is about the same size as a visible light, right on the outside of visible light you can see. And bacteria, little bacteria things. Here are our olfactory receptors. Are kind of around the same size as visible light. I think is interesting. Your eyes can pick up stuff the same size as your nose can, pretty much. Communicate with your brain. Largest bacteria. So here's the transistor gate next to that AIDS virus. Oh, here's the AIDS virus next to a red blood cell. It's cool. It's neat to see things next to each other. So sperm, and then the smallest radio wave. The radio wave is kind of around the same size as our brain wave, the biggest brain wave. It's interesting. So I think it's up here, radio wave. Yeah, infrared and radio about the same. So, in -4, fruit fly, crystals, pineal crystal that can get stuck in the pineal gland, so you want to drink nice, clean water. Here's blood coagulation, hair follicle, pollen grain, all that stuff next to a red blood cell. So a red blood cell is kind of like around the same size, sort of in the same area as a hair follicle, which I think is interesting. Biggest brain cell is like about the same size as nanotechnology. Look, nano gears, gears turning around, brain gears, they're the same size, huh? Trippy, huh? Pulmonary alveoli, only smoke the good stuff, guys. Smallest fruit. Here's the sperm getting into the egg, right next to a mite. So the smallest that you are, that you can get as a person, is about the size of a yellow mite. And yeah, a little bit smaller than the salt grain. So, or a fairy fly. So, here's the baby of 5 weeks. Here's your finger, sweat glands on your finger. Mosquito. So now we're down to -1. So this is only a centimeter across. I mean, this is 10 centimeters across. This is 1 centimeter across. Here. 1 centimeter across. I should have been reading this. 1/100th of a meter. So in -2, you have, or size dimension number 18, you have, it's 1 decimeter, 10 centimeters across. So this is stuff that is in your common daily life. Points in your eye. So this is where we live. This is the one that I'm talking about. This is 1 meter across. So this is where your face is, and your hand, and your computer and basketball, stuff you deal with on a daily basis. This is how big this stuff is in that world. So that's the stuff that's smaller than us. And now getting into the world bigger than us, we're still dealing with radio waves. These are the biggest things that ever existed, and I'll put it up above describing it. So it's not your common, just your biggest. So biggest common is biggest condor is bigger than your biggest eagle. Biggest saber-toothed tiger was as big as a big old horse, bigger than these guys. Makes these guys look little. And this is the biggest crocodile ever, an anaconda ever, but look how big they are. Yikes. You eat a lion. And here's people. But it'd have the saber-tooth could beat it. Okay, and here's how tall people are. There's my van. And then here's things, here's the people, the animals. And this is 1 plus 2. So this is 100 meters across. Plus 3. 1 kilometer across. There's an asteroid supposed to hit in 2029. And so this is like buildings. Biggest tree, the redwood. So all the big plains. Here's the biggest dinosaur walking next to the pyramid. So, and then here's Mount McKinley from sea level. How big it would be. If you were to put Mount McKinley just jutting right out of sea level, you know, I guess take a picture of it from the side and have these buildings, this is how big the buildings would be next to it. And the pyramid, and the boats, and the track, and asteroid and stuff. So it's just this little asteroid here can totally screw stuff up even though they're not that big. It's pretty interesting. See that so fast. So here's 100 kilometers across, power of 10, so this is 10 kilometers, now we're dealing with 100 kilometers. So this is how high Mount Everest is. And, but you can still see stuff. This is towns, Vail, Boulder. This is the size of a town. Those pulsars kind of around the same size of a town, which I think is interesting. The Colorado sand dunes are about the same size as Boulder. So anyway, 1,000 kilometers across, you're talking states. Big lakes fit in here, big islands, Hawaii. And then the pulsar is kind of a smaller than the state, but you can see them kind of together. And if you ever wondered on +7 how big the Death Stars were compared to each other and compared to the moon, here you go. The first Death Star wasn't that big. The one that they blew up, when they built it again, they built a bigger one. Here's the bigger one that they blew up that wasn't completed. So, and here's how big they are compared to the moons. They were like little moons, you know. Pretty trippy. And the moon's about as big, almost as big as Mercury in Colorado. So the big-ass Death Star was about as big in circumference as Colorado. That's huge. Even the little one folded out would be kind of comparable. That's wild. That's big, man. Okay. So number 8, 100,000 kilometers. You got the Earth, Venus about the same size, all the other planets. And then if you go even more, you can see the Earth with the aura around Earth is about the same size as Saturn. And little dwarf stars are getting in here. Earth to the, ever wanted to know what Earth to the moon was? Well, here's how big the Earth is. And here's how big the moon is and how big far away from the Earth it is in comparison to how they look like each other and how far away they are compared to the size of Saturn and this stuff. Other brown dwarf star, pretty interesting. So then 10 million kilometers, 10 times more, you can see these big planets. I don't have Earth to moon here for some reason, but it's like this, you know. Like a planet, I guess. A little bit bigger than a planet, Earth to moon like that. So, here's the stars around here. The brightest star in the sky is Sirius. And then in Vega, another big star. Our sun is almost as big as Sirius, but closer to Sirius in size than Jupiter. So here's our sun, and here's Arcturus, the big red giant. So then let's make Arcturus little. Here's little Arcturus. And here's the sun to the Earth distance. I have this here. Huh. Does that really belong there? I'll have to double check. That might be one of them above. But here's Arcturus to its planet 3 times Jupiter's size. So Arcturus has a planet that there's life on. So here's some other big stars: Pollux, Aldebaran, Rigel. The sun, when it's a red giant, it's going to get big. Arcturus is a red giant, but not as big as our sun is right now, I guess, because it had already done its red giant, or it hasn't done it yet, or something. Here's our solar system, our inner solar system size. It's in +12. So it's like 500 million kilometers across, almost, it looks like. So here's 10 billion kilometers across, even more. Here's our entire solar system. And here's the biggest red giant star is almost as big as our solar system. And positive 13. And here's our other big red giant stars. And here's our solar system across on another side view. So, with the radius of it. In positive 14, you have this is a picture, but then the size relevant picture of the planetary nebula NG 7027. So you can barely see it, but it's big. It's a big old star up there. And it's like a good star, you know, fresh star. So there's big fresh stars in the middle of the nebulas are giant. Here's the heliosphere around the Earth in our solar system. And here's the nebula, that pretty nebula. That's how big it is. It's around the same size as our solar system. So here's the Boomerang Nebula. Here's our solar system next to the Boomerang Nebula. So here's the Boomerang Nebula, planetary nebula this, Eskimo Nebula. Now we're in the size of nebulas and light years. So they're like half of a light year across, these pretty nebulas are. 10 trillion kilometers. You're talking 16. Wait, what's 3 times 4? Yeah, 12. 13 zeros after 1, positive 16. So one fun thing to do is if you wanted to see like, well, what like we are to Eskimo Nebula to, so what is to us what we are to Eskimo Nebula? Well, the weak force. The weak force is to us, because they're negative 16, as the Eskimo Nebula is to us, positive 16. So let's play a little game like that when we're done. So in positive 17, you have the sun to the nearest star. See, this is 4 light years across. Here's 1 light year. And here's the pillars of creation and the Eagle Nebula. That's pretty, huh? Man, I'm starting to sober up. I'm going to have to get really high after the end of this. So here's those other nebulas. So the sun to the nearest star is kind of like the same size as the arm of this nebula. You took it in, think about 4 years to get across this. So in positive 18, sun to the Pleiades across here, 146 light years. Another nebula, big nebulas. There's all sorts of different kinds of nebulas. And then nebulas, go right into galaxies. So you can see a nebula here is kind of comparable in size to a galaxy. It's like a little galaxy, tiny little galaxy. 50th the size. But here's the Sagittarius dwarf elliptical galaxy, our nearest, the closest galaxy to us, and that's what it looks like in positive 19. So positive 20. I don't have that galaxy here. It should be here. But here is our sun's neighborhood, sun to the nearest star. Here's what our sun's neighborhood is in the real time. And the Pleiades, sun to Arcturus distance here. More nebulas. So there's nebulas that are bigger than galaxies, right? Because this galaxy would be like this big, and here's a nebula. So there's nebulas even bigger than galaxies. And then if you go 10 times bigger, now I should have these down here, but it's not. I'll put them here. But here is the Milky Way in positive 21, and here's where our sun is in it. So if you go positive 22, here's the Milky Way. Here's Andromeda, a little bit bigger than the Milky Way. It's our closest galaxy. And then the Sombrero Galaxy, about the same size as the Milky Way, a little bit smaller. Plus 23, you have another elliptical galaxy, supercluster that we're in. I think this is what our supercluster looks like. Then plus 24, it's just galaxies. Plus 25, you get a supercluster. Plus 26, here's the size of our supercluster within the superclusters that we're in. And that's how big that is within our known universe. This is not a real photo of the known universe. This is just the photo of... This whole field of vision is the size of a pin, like a needle. If you were to hold it out from eye's view, 3 feet away, the area of a tip of a needle taken by the Hubble telescope. So let's play the game. Here's where we live. There's me. So what is to smaller than us? What is the same thing to bigger than us? So a quarter to us is what we are to a mastodon. Okay. Well, not us, but like a quarter to a basketball is to your head is what your head is to a mastodon. So your head squash quarter, mastodon squash your head. All right, -2. So a little baby that's 5 weeks old and your fingerprint and a mosquito is the same size as is what is to you what you are to a house. Oh, okay. Or a whale. Okay. So let's see, a brain. The biggest brain cell is to you, and the smallest of the micromechanical device, and your pulmonary alveoli. Oh my God, and a flea head and a grain of salt and such is to you what we are to a skyscraper and a pyramid and an asteroid. And this is, I forgot to mention this before. This is depth of water, how deep water has to get. So this is where all these animals are in real life. And then below that, you get all these guys. Yeah, trippy. Okay, so yeah, so the smallest human brain cell in a sperm, and a quasi-crystal, and like a bacteria cluster, red blood cell cluster, coagulation, your hair follicle, pollen grain, kind of like a little red blood cell is in there, small. Is to you, that's basically just say a cluster of red blood cells, or your hair. Is to you, your hair is to you what you are to Denali, Mount McKinley. So yeah, a person walking around in Mount McKinley is kind of like your something as big as the width of your hair walking around on your head. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So let's see, -5. So a red blood cell and the light, sort of, not really. The light's on the one above, but the red blood cell and what you can, like the dendrites that feel your, whatever those are called, olfactory receptor neurons that smell, and the largest bacteria and stuff, neurons and blood cell, is to you what we are to Hawaii, Kauai, and Mount Rainier, and a city like Denver or something. There's Boulder. So yeah, people. Our brain cells, neurons, olfactors are like to the body what people are to Denver. Okay? You feeling me? Okay, pox virus, different viruses. And the smallest transistor gates we have, and the DNA chromosome, and the smallest known living eukaryote, and the brain waves that we can see, the light waves we can see, are the same size to us as we are to a state, okay, to Colorado. So picture yourself walking around Colorado, and you are to Colorado what little like light waves are to your brain, to your eyes, okay, or the DNA chromosome, okay, or viruses. So -7, let's see here. Proteins. Proteins are super small clusters of different, basically, atoms. And those are to you, and the poliovirus, and even the double helix down here. But mainly proteins are to you what you are to the moon. Woo! And here's a state down here. So to you are to like America. I could put a map of America here. I probably should. So you are to America what proteins are to you. Okay, so if America's like, I need more, if you're like, I need more protein, like I need 50,000 protein, whatever. America's like, I need more people, I need 50,000 people, you know what I mean? And like that. So the insulin protein, the tiny proteins in the double helix, and where the buckyball is, which you can make go into the space dimensions, space world. Um, um, yeah, it's pretty interesting. You should study the double helix, explain it. But those things, your DNA helix, double helix, buckyball, insulin, this is like the borderline of physical reality because of what this thing can do. Like here, let me just say now, because I've got people in trench. Double slit experiment. When people would shoot these things through, but they have to watch them go through. They see them go through, but if they don't watch them, it'll disappear and it'll turn into a probability. So it'll just split up and hit the wall on different sides, just like an electron. So anyway, so the insulin protein double helix is to us what we are to the Earth, sort of. All right, to see how the Earth is the same size as a insulin protein. Insulin protein double helix, Earth. So we're a little. So the double helix walking around us is like we are walking around the Earth. You know, you travel around the world. Some little double helix is traveling around the body, type of a thing. Pretty interesting. So -9. You have the atoms. These are where the atoms live. So an atom to us is what we are to a big, big, big planet. So we are to Earth what the protein is to us, but you know we are an atom. What an atom is to us, what we are to Saturn or Jupiter or the whole Earth's magnetosphere. So okay, so an electron, the smallest atom, the hydrogen atom is to us what we are to the biggest stars, like to the sun. -10, sort of. We are to an atom, electron, what Vega is. We are to a hydrogen atom what we are to the Vega star. So empty space is to us like the empty space between the atoms, between the nucleus and the electron is to us what we are to Arcturus. And then you have these little guys within the nucleus will be +12, like big old stars. And then nucleuses are the same size to us what we are to the solar system. The nucleus of the atom is to us what we are to the solar system. Trippy. Okay. And then the neutron and the helium nucleus. Oh yeah, the smaller nucleuses are. So there's nucleus of different size are what we are to, like the nebula, or the big solar system. And then the weak force to us is what we are to a small nebula. The electron and nucleon is what we are to the pillars of creation, or a big nebula. Right, so electron is what this nebula is, basically a nebula galaxy. So electron is to us what we are to a nebula. Pretty interesting, huh? A small galaxy. So that's my sizes of things page. So you can compare things, like how big they are compared to us, how small things are compared to us, like what small things are compared to us as what we are compared to big things. And you can also compare what little things are compared to each other, you know, like how the double helix compares to something bigger, like poliovirus, but also how it compares to something. Well, we'll see, each one of these should exist in a couple. So how the polio virus compares to the herpes virus, smaller than herpes virus, but is bigger than the double helix. So the double helix is sort of something you can compare to the herpes or even to the transistor. It's a way to compare stuff up and through the line. So go check it out on your own while you're really stoned.